You're drowning in your own mind, aren't you? Not in water, but in something far more suffocating. An invisible poison that tastes like your own voice, sounds like your own reasoning, feels like your own truth. Yet, it's killing you slowly, thought by thought, minute by minute, until you've forgotten what mental freedom even feels like. Picture a Roman soldier standing alone in a Germanic forest, surrounded by enemies he cannot see. Every shadow could be death. Every sound could be his last. That soldier is you. The forest is your mind. And the enemies, they're wearing your face, speaking in your voice, using your memories as weapons against you. Marcus Aurelius wrote these words while plague ravaged his empire and his own son plotted against him. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Consider that for a moment, your soul, that eternal flame within you, is being stained black by thoughts that were never meant to define you. You've become a walking cemetery of dead dreams, killed by living thoughts that should have died instead. There's a phenomenon in nature where parasitic wasps inject their eggs into living caterpillars. The larvae eat the host from the inside while keeping it alive, using its body as a puppet. This is exactly what toxic thoughts do to your mind. They've hollowed you out from within. And now you're just a shell performing life while something else pulls the strings. But the Stoics discovered something revolutionary, something so powerful that emperors and slaves alike used it to transform mental torture into mental mastery. They learned that the mind trying to destroy you is the same mind that can save you. The prison and the key exist in the same space. Tonight, someone will stand on a bridge convinced their thoughts are prophecies. Tomorrow, someone will quit their dreams because their inner voice sounds so reasonable when it whispers, "Give up." Right now, someone is medicating themselves into numbness because facing their thoughts feels like facing a firing squad. Maybe that someone is you. Maybe you've been running so long from your own mind that you've forgotten you're the one giving it permission to chase you. The Stoics called this the ultimate paradox. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Yet we treat imagination as reality and reality as imagination. I'm about to hand you 5 ancient weapons forged in the philosophical fires of Stoicism, sharpened by centuries of human suffering and triumph. These aren't feel-good platitudes or wishful thinking. These are cognitive combat techniques that will teach you to assassinate toxic thoughts before they assassinate your potential. Don't you dare skip ahead. Your mind will try to make you leave. That's its survival mechanism kicking in. It knows what's coming. Stay with me through every word because transformation doesn't happen in the parts you want to hear, but in the parts you need to hear. Hit like right now as your first act of rebellion. Subscribe and activate notifications because this war isn't won in a day. Comment below, I am the emperor of my mind, not its slave. Now, let's get into it. First, burning your mental demons alive. You've been possessed not by some supernatural entity, but by something far more insidious, thought patterns that have colonized your consciousness, like a virus rewriting your mental DNA. These aren't just negative thoughts. They're psychological parasites that have convinced you they're part of your identity. Epictetus, who was literally born in chains, discovered something that shattered the very concept of mental slavery. Men are disturbed not by things but by the views which they take of them. He realized while his body was owned by another man, his mind was experiencing a slavery of its own making. The chains on his feet were nothing compared to the chains in his head. Listen to what's really happening inside your skull. Every toxic thought is a small death. You're experiencing thousands of miniature funerals daily. The death of confidence, the burial of hope, the cremation of self-worth. Your mind has become a graveyard where possibilities go to die. And you're both the mourner and the one being mourned. The Stoics developed what I call the philosophical exorcism. When a thought enters your mind claiming to be truth, you grab it by the throat and interrogate it like a spy caught behind enemy lines. You don't negotiate with it. You don't reason with it. You dissect it alive. A thought whispers, "Everyone thinks you're pathetic." The old you would accept this. Let it metastasize into social anxiety. Let it breed until you're afraid to leave your house. But the Stoic warrior asks, who is everyone? Name them. Show me the evidence. Present your witnesses. The thought has none because lies never do. This isn't positive thinking dressed in ancient robes. This is mental warfare at its most brutal and necessary. You're not affirming yourself into delusion. You're torturing false thoughts until they confess their lies. You're performing surgery on your consciousness without anesthesia because the pain of extraction is nothing compared to the pain of infection. The Romans had a practice called decimation, killing 1 in every 10 soldiers to maintain discipline. Your mind needs decimation. For every 10 thoughts that claim citizenship in your consciousness, 9 are illegal immigrants. They have no papers, no right to residency, no legitimate claim to your mental real estate. When you master this, something miraculous happens. The thoughts that once terrorized you become pathetic, like bullies exposed in daylight, shrinking from giants into gnats. Second, making your thoughts fight to the death. Welcome to the most violent arena ever constructed. Not built of stone and sand where gladiators bled, but built of neurons and synapses where thoughts battle for dominance. And most will die screaming. Seneca wrote something that should haunt you. It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact. How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass? He watched his own thoughts like an emperor watching gladiators, knowing that most were performers, not warriors, all show, no substance. Your toxic thoughts have been winning because you've been letting them fight unopposed. They walk into your mental arena like champions while your positive thoughts cower in the shadows like beaten dogs. But here's the revolutionary truth the Stoics discovered. You're not just a spectator in this Colosseum. You're the emperor. You decide who lives and who dies. Imagine this scene. A thought enters your arena. It's massive, wearing armor made of your past failures, wielding weapons forged from your deepest fears. It roars, you'll never be loved because you're fundamentally broken. The crowd of your emotions goes wild. Your anxiety cheers. Your depression does the wave. Your self-doubt starts a chant. But then you do something unexpected. You release another gladiator into the arena, logic. And logic asks a simple question. If you're fundamentally broken, how did you survive every single thing that tried to break you? Suddenly, the giant thought doesn't look so giant. Its armor starts showing cracks. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire. Not suppressing thoughts, but making them fight for survival. Every toxic thought that claims permanent residence in your mind must face trial by combat. No exceptions, no mercy, no negotiations. Here's where most people fail catastrophically. They think positive thinking means being nice to their thoughts, treating them like guests to be entertained. But the Stoics knew better. They treated thoughts like invading armies to be conquered or allies to be tested in battle. Your mind isn't a democracy where every thought gets a vote. It's a dictatorship where you're the tyrant and thoughts live or die by your command. I once had a thought that held me hostage for 3 years, you're wasting your life and it's too late to change. This thought had won so many battles in my mental coliseum that other thoughts wouldn't even enter the arena until one day I released a different warrior. If it's too late, then why does this thought keep fighting so hard to convince me? The toxic thought had no answer because lies never do when truth starts asking questions. That thought died in my arena that day, and its death scream was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. It sounded like freedom. Third, transmuting mental poison into power. The ancient alchemists believed they could turn lead into gold. They were wrong about metal, but accidentally right about the mind. The Stoics discovered the real alchemy, the art of transmuting toxic thoughts into rocket fuel for transformation. Not destroying them, not suppressing them, but metabolizing them like your body metabolizes poison into antibodies. Marcus Aurelius, while watching his empire burn and his body decay from plague, wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't writing motivational poetry. He was documenting a psychological discovery that would make modern neuroscientists weep with recognition. Your toxic thoughts aren't enemies to be destroyed. They're raw material to be transformed. Every self-destructive thought contains within it the seed of its own destruction and your elevation. But you've been throwing away gold because it came wrapped in garbage. Consider the thought that haunts millions: I'm not good enough. This thought has destroyed more dreams than all the failures in history combined. But watch what happens when you perform Stoic alchemy on it. You don't fight it. You don't deny it. You dissect it with surgical precision and extract its hidden gift. I'm not good enough becomes I'm not good enough yet. That yet is alchemy. Suddenly the thought that paralyzed you becomes the thought that mobilizes you. The poison becomes medicine. The curse becomes catalyst. You've taken your mind's attempt to destroy you and turned it into instructions for construction. But here's where it gets beautifully violent. The Stoics realized that toxic thoughts are actually distorted truths, reality that's been tortured into lies. Your job isn't to reject them, but to torture them back into truth. When your mind says everyone will laugh at you, the alchemical response isn't no, they won't. It's some might, and I'll survive it like I've survived everything else. This isn't acceptance. This isn't resignation. This is weaponization. You're taking your mind's ammunition and loading it into your own gun. You're stealing fire from the gods of fear and using it to forge your own destiny. The most powerful people in history weren't those without toxic thoughts. They were those who learned to digest them, metabolize them, and excrete excellence. Napoleon's fear of insignificance drove him to conquer Europe. Tesla's obsession with inadequacy powered the electrical revolution. Their toxic thoughts didn't disappear. They transformed into the very energy that immortalized them. Right now, you're sitting on a gold mine of transformation disguised as a cesspool of toxicity. Every negative thought pulsing through your neurons is potential energy waiting to be converted into kinetic power. But you've been treating uranium like dirt, not realizing you're holding atomic power in your hands. The Stoics knew something we've forgotten. Suffering is just unrefined strength. Mental pain is just power that hasn't been properly processed. Your toxic thoughts aren't trying to kill you. They're trying to birth a version of you that can't be killed. Fourth, executing thoughts before they execute you. There's a moment lasting less than a millisecond where every toxic thought is vulnerable to assassination. The Stoics discovered this kill window and turned it into an art form. They became cognitive assassins, thought hunters, mental executioners who killed destructive patterns before they could spawn their poisonous offspring. Epictetus taught his students something that should be carved into your skull. Catch yourself in the act. Not after the thought has nested in your brain. Not after it's laid eggs of anxiety. But in that pregnant moment when it's just emerging from the darkness of your subconscious, naked and defenseless. Your mind is currently running an underground criminal organization. Toxic thoughts are being born in the shadows, growing in the dark, emerging fully formed and armed. By the time you notice them, they've already established supply lines, recruited emotions as soldiers, and fortified themselves with false logic. You're always fighting wars you've already lost because you're showing up after the enemy has dug trenches. But watch what happens when you become a cognitive assassin. You develop what I call thought prescience, the ability to sense toxic thoughts before they fully materialize. That familiar tightness in your chest? That's not anxiety. That's your early warning system detecting an incoming thought missile. That sudden drop in your stomach? That's your body telling you a mental invasion is beginning. The Stoics practiced something called prosopsia, continuous attention, a state of permanent vigilance where no thought enters consciousness without inspection. They became psychological snipers, picking off toxic thoughts from a distance before those thoughts even knew they were being hunted. Here's the assassination protocol. A thought begins forming: this presentation will be a disaster. In the old world, this thought would fully manifest, recruit fear as its bodyguard, anxiety as its publicist, and self-doubt as its enforcer. But the cognitive assassin strikes in that fraction of a second between formation and solidification. You don't argue with it. You don't analyze it. You execute it with a single question: according to whom? That question is a bullet to the head of every toxic thought, because toxic thoughts can't answer it without revealing their fraudulence. According to whom will it be a disaster? The thought scrambles, tries to say, everyone. But you've already reloaded. Name one specific person. The thought is bleeding out now, gasping. It's just obvious. But you deliver the killing blow, obvious to someone who succeeded at every presentation they've properly prepared for. The thought dies not dramatically, not slowly, but instantly, like flipping a switch from darkness to light. And here's the beautiful brutality of it. Other toxic thoughts witness this execution. They see their comrade assassinated before it could even scream. They learn fear. They begin avoiding your conscious awareness because they know what awaits them there. Marcus Aurelius performed these assassinations while running an empire at war. Between signing death warrants for actual criminals, he was signing death warrants for criminal thoughts. He wrote how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. He wasn't just avoiding comparison. He was assassinating thoughts at their source, killing them before they could even form into coherent anxieties. You've been bringing knives to a gunfight, wondering why your positive affirmations bounce off the armor of toxic thoughts. It's time to upgrade your arsenal. It's time to become what your toxic thoughts fear most: a mind that kills doubt before doubt kills dreams. Fifth, burning your mental empire to build an unstoppable mind. Sometimes the corruption runs so deep that reformation isn't enough. Sometimes your mental architecture is so infected with toxic thought patterns that the only solution is complete psychological arson. The Stoics knew this. They called it renovatio, not renovation but complete renewal through controlled destruction. Seneca lost everything: wealth, position, favor, and was forced into exile. But instead of being destroyed, he discovered something terrifying and liberating. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. He realized that his mind needed the same treatment. Not therapy, not healing, but controlled burning, like forests that require fire to release seeds that have been waiting decades to grow. Your mind right now is a haunted house built on a cemetery of failed attempts, decorated with furniture made from past traumas, painted with the blood of old wounds. You've been trying to redecorate when you should be reaching for the gasoline and matches. The Phoenix Protocol isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about burning everything to ash and building something unbreakable from the carbon remains. Here's what nobody tells you about transformation. It requires a kind of mental suicide. Not physical death, but the complete annihilation of the psychological structure you've been calling yourself. That voice in your head that sounds like you. It's not you. It's a compilation of every criticism you've absorbed, every failure you've internalized, every fear you've adopted as truth. It's a parasite that's convinced you it's your personality. The Phoenix Protocol begins with this recognition. You are not your thoughts. You are not your mental patterns. You are not your internal narrative. You are the consciousness observing these things. And you have the power to burn down the entire production and start fresh. Not tomorrow, not after therapy, not when you feel ready. Right now, in this moment, you can set fire to every mental structure that's been housing your suffering. Marcus Aurelius performed this protocol nightly. He wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." But here's what most people miss. He wasn't describing resistance. He was describing complete psychological death and rebirth. Every night he burned down the emperor who woke up that morning and built a new one from the ashes. The process is violent, beautiful, and necessary. You gather every toxic thought, every limiting belief, every mental pattern that's been feeding on your potential, and you build a pyre. Then you don't just light it, you become the flame. You burn so hot that even the ashes turn to vapor. You become empty, void, nothing. And in that nothingness, something extraordinary happens. New thoughts begin emerging. But these aren't the old parasites wearing new masks. These are virgin thoughts born from consciousness rather than conditioning. They don't carry the DNA of your trauma. They don't speak in the voice of your parents' fears or society's expectations. They speak in a voice you've never heard before, your actual voice, the one that existed before the world taught you to hate yourself. This isn't a one-time event. The Phoenix Protocol is a daily practice, a nightly ritual, a constant state of readiness to burn everything down rather than live one more day in a mental prison. Every toxic thought that enters your consciousness becomes fuel for the fire. Every limiting belief becomes kindling for your transformation. You've been trying to think your way out of thinking problems. It's time to burn your way to clarity. Comment your declaration of psychological revolution: I burn down who I was to become who I meant to be. Music. You've just been handed 5 weapons of mass construction. Not destruction, construction. Because every toxic thought you assassinate, every mental pattern you burn, every cognitive structure you demolish is clearing ground for the empire of consciousness you're about to build. The Stoics didn't promise you peace. They promised you power. The power to transform mental chaos into focused fury. The power to alchemize suffering into strength. The power to burn down your limitations and rise from the ashes as something unprecedented. Tomorrow morning, when those toxic thoughts come crawling back, and they will, like zombies that don't know they're dead, you'll be ready. Not with positive affirmations that bounce off their armor, but with philosophical weapons that pierce straight through to their fraudulent core. Remember, you're not fighting for mental health. You're fighting for mental dominance. You're not seeking peace. You're declaring war on everything in your mind that declares war on your potential. This isn't where your journey ends. This is where your revolution begins. Hit subscribe because this battle requires constant reinforcement. Share this with someone drowning in their own thoughts. Like this video as a declaration that you're ready to become the emperor of your mental empire. Comment your final war cry: my mind is no longer my prison. It's my kingdom.